I'm sure I speak for everyone when I say lives can at times contain various elements of stress, sometimes multiple stresses at once. The question we often find ourselves asking when we're in such an overwhelming position is, how do we deal with it and how do we navigate these everyday stresses without being overwhelmed? Today we focus on the how and the tools we can use to gain more clarity and mindfulness in our lives, both at work and at home. We look forward to gaining some insights today on our conscious and subconscious selves and how we can use this information to build mindfulness, improve our health, and our well-being. Today's speaker is Dr. Natasha Winkler-Titus. She's an established work psychologist with more than 25 years experience in people leadership, executive development, and management consulting. Natasha was awarded the 2019 Organizational Psychology Practitioner of the Year in South Africa. She believes in using her influence and platform to empower others towards significance and driving societal change and transformation. Natasha is the founder and curator of Signifier, a body of associates aiming to make change significant for individuals and organizations. She's also a full-time faculty member of the University of Stellenbosch Business School, teaching and researching in leadership and organizational behavior. Ensuring her societal impact towards future significance, Natasha currently serves as the immediate past president for the Society of Industrial and Organizational Psychologists in South Africa, supervising and mentoring intern psychologists, and serves as an international expert panelist for the Center for Global Inclusion. Dr. Natasha Winkler-Titus, welcome, and thank you for being with us today. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Andile. If I can just check that my sound is okay.
The sound is all good.
Thanks so much. Thank you so much, Andile, and thank you, Bro, for inviting me into your space to share this afternoon with you. I am not going to share slides because I just want to talk to you today and I want your full attention on this session. I would encourage you to give yourself a gift and for the next 20 to 30 minutes to switch everything off. Take your cell phone, put it in the drawer, close all the additional apps that's open on your second and third screens, and just for 20 to 30 minutes, just gift yourself the time of focus. Now, by show of virtual hands, and that you can do in the form of a chat, comment, or an emoji in the chat box, who of you would like more focus, clarity, and maybe even less stress? Okay, I see definitely Andre is with me and Andile is with me. So if that's what you would like, I would invite you to just stay with me a little bit longer. So through this series, we have had a number of speakers speaking into this, the idea of mindfulness, with the aim of building your mind wellness. And today I want to continue on this strain of conversation. But I'm going to place a little bit more emphasis on breathing. Hopefully, you are one click away from today's session with an extra pearl of wisdom in your toolkit toward an optimal life. As I said, I'm not going to clutter the space with slides because I just want you to focus on what I say. And afterwards, we will share some notes on this talk with you. So let's go. In the chat again, tell me how much time in a form of percentage do you spend thinking about breathing? Zero, zero, never, never zero. Yay, PJ is with me, at least 20%. Heaven sending 0.000. Only when stressed, very little. Good. Now, in a percentage as well, tell me how much time do you spend thinking about work? And I think the picture is going to look much different. 150%, sure. Nolene, I need to find out where you get that extra 50%. Leslie, 24%, 24/7, 80%, 95%. Oh my goodness. Okay, so by now you should notice that there's a little bit of a problem here. So I know that work is important. It's not just our livelihood in terms of a financial income, but it ideally should give us a sense of purpose and meaning. It gives us relations. It gives us a network of people, like-minded people. So there's lots of benefit, and that's a whole talk on its own around the goodness of work and the purpose of work. But if I had to ask you, between work and breathing, if you had to stop one of them, which one will likely lead to you dying? So let me give you a little anecdote. About 20 years ago, I was in my late 20s. I was an accomplished work psychologist. I was successful in worldly sense, a good career, a good job, my own home, car, travel abroad, etc., all those nice things. And then I had a heart attack scare. So I was that proverbial hamster on the wheel, chasing heaven knows what, always under pressure, always working and playing hard. I did some sort of some sorting out of this, and I was on a journey of self-discovery and flow. And one day, I had just left a client office, very stressed about a project and deadlines on a Sunday afternoon, when a good friend of mine called. After a long chat about me moaning and feeling sorry for myself and anxious, and my friend said, "What's the worst that will happen?" It took a few times back and forth, but eventually the outcome of that conversation that Sunday afternoon, late afternoon, was that I realized no one will die, especially not me. So I need to place this stress thing into perspective. So now let me tell you, if you stop stressing and feeling anxious, you won't die. In fact, you may become even more efficient. But if you stop breathing, you will die. So usually what I find is that breathing is underrated. So what would you say if I told you that you are one deep breath away from an optimal life? So let's put that to the test. Remember what I asked you. Gift yourself a few minutes this afternoon. Switch everything off. Just pay attention to yourself this afternoon. So first, let's take a victorious breath. This type of breath usually makes me feel steady and calm. The first part requires a whispering sound at the back of your throat. So open your mouth and breathe in and out. So do that with me. In and out. Good. The second part is to breathe in through an open mouth and out through sealed lips, like this. Open mouth, breathe in. Close your lips to breathe out. Do that with me. In and out. Listen. The final stage is to breathe in and exhale through sealed lips. It looks and sounds like this. Do it with me. Breathe in and out. Keep that whispering sound at the back of your throat, okay? Now, the second stage of this exercise is to expand your rib cage. Place your hands on the sides of your ribs. Exhale everything out. Now, inhale deeply and feel your rib cage lift. Exhale and see your rib cage go down again. Do it one more time. And out. Great. Now hold that breathing while I talk to you this afternoon. Now today I want to bust 2 neuromyths that you may or may not have come to believe. The first is that your brain cannot change. And the second is that we only use part of the brain at any given time, and that your brain is silent when we do nothing. Are you still breathing? Good. Now, fact, the mind is always going. Also, when we don't even know it's going. When we're in our deepest REM sleep, our brain is still working. It's that same mind that holds our brain, that tells every bit of our body what to do. The one that needs to be rational and logicked, and also simultaneously innovative and engaging, thoughtful and kind and considerate. The same one that needs to be focused and spontaneous. So how much time do you spend taking care of your mind? And I don't mean feeding it with cognitive knowledge or problem solving only. You see, every time we learn something new or we experience something with our brain, body, mind, and our soul, we change our brain. That is called neuroplasticity. All our behavior changes our brain, and our brain changes all our behavior. Did you get that? All our behavior changes our brain, and our brain changes all our behavior. Are you still breathing? The ways in which you can change your brain are threefold. First, chemical. Neurons transfer chemical signals between brain cells, causing actions and reactions. These are rapid and support short-term memory and performance. So, remember, neurons that fire together, wires together. The second way to change our brain is structurally. We change the connections between the neurons. We literally alter the physical structure of the brain, and therefore this takes more time. It affects long-term memory and improvement in skill because new integrated networks are created. Lastly, we can change the brain functioning. The more you use a specific area of your brain, it becomes more excitable and easy to use again, starting to form habits. This causes networks in the brain shifting and activating. The chemical and structural changes must work together to ensure short-term success is sustained in the functioning of the brain. But here's the secret. In order to change the brain, you need to still the brain. So, are you still breathing? This breathing allows more oxygen to flow to the brain. If you're not used to it, you may even feel a little lightheaded initially. Some of you have stopped breathing in this way. The deep breathing is beginning to regulate your nervous system. To stay focused, keep your feet active. Do this with me. Plant your feet on the floor where you're sitting. Spread those toes and really feel how you become grounded. In your mind's eye, see little roots flowing out of your feet into the ground and stabilizing you. Now, as we continue, stay with your grounded feet and remember to breathe. deeply, slowly, mindfully. Now, stress in the environment sends signals to the amygdala, who then responds. Now, the amygdala is a part of the brain that regulates our emotions. Did you hear that? The feelings live in our brain, not in our heart. So that same brain that holds all our knowledge and memories and stories, help us to reason, also holds our feelings. Okay, so stress in the environment sends signals to the amygdala. Now, that's a big word, don't worry. You'll forget to, so if you want to share this with your family tonight, let's just call that part of the brain for now, amygdala. So anyway, stress sends signals to amygdala. Alarm goes off and the body needs to prepare a response. We are all familiar with the fight or flight states. This response sends adrenaline to your body. We need adrenaline to fight or flee, but the adrenaline also inflames our tissues. So once the adrenaline leaves the body after your stress response, the stress hormone cortisol stays behind. Now remember, this was good in the Stone Age because environmental stresses were animals in the wild, like lions in the wild, that the hunter encountered on his activities. So for the hunter, his body needed to get into an actual state of readiness to either fight or run for his life. Our stresses in the modern day life sits in our computers or in our relationship with people, in cognitive work. So we seldom have an immediate outlet for that stress. We don't have to fight anyone or anything or flee for our lives. In essence, it's not the same stress experience, but nobody has told the mind-body connection that yet. So the body still responds in the same way, but this excess cortisol and inflamed tissue now causes all kinds of new problems, physical, manifesting in your physical ways through our body. Okay, now that was a lot. Are you still breathing? In and out. You see, it's not always easy to focus on more than one thing at a time. And the feet, are they still grounded? Now, an alternative system to the fight and flight is the parasympathetic nervous system, which triggers an alternative response. So instead of fight or flight, we can train our brain towards a response of rest and digest. And this stimulates our hearts. Research shows that breathing influences heart rate variability, which in turn influences stress, blood pressure, diabetes, anxiety, focus and clarity, and ultimately our behavior. Now ask yourself, is that worth taking a deep breath for? Research has also shown that good quality leaders have a high heart rate variability, living and working from a place of rest and digest, exercising emotional control and avoiding knee-jerk reactions. Imagine if we can inspire everyone around us to respond from a place of rest and digest just by breathing better. Now, place your hands on an area in your body where there's pain. For me, it's usually here. It's where I hold my stress. Keep your hand there. If you don't have pain or stress, place your hand on a part of the body that you like. Now ground your feet. Spread those toes. Your mind's eye, see those little roots going into the floor, through the tiles, through the carpet, and grounding you where you are, giving you a sense of stability and calm. Breathe in deeply and slowly release your breath. Take one more deep breath in and out. And just for luck, just take one more deep breath in and out. Never underestimate when somebody asks you to take a deep breath, because you're always one deep breath away from changing the way you feel within yourself and the way you choose to respond to the rest of the world. Thank you very much. And Andile, I'm happy to take questions or comments.
Thank you, Natasha. That was absolutely wonderful. And I think if there's one thing that I'm going to take away from today's session is to ask myself throughout the day if I am still breathing. We've got 2 questions already. And our first question is, how do you hit pause and practice mindfulness on a day when your to-do list feels infinitively long?
There's a few things that I always keep in mind, Andile. And I do take this quite seriously. As I said, it was the most stupidest thing. It was a Sunday afternoon conversation followed by a glass of wine, which always helps me. But that somebody looks at me and says, what's the worst that could happen? Now, being a strategic person, being a psychologist, I always knew that. But it hit me right here. And I said, but I have to get perspective. I have to get perspective. Right. So first of all, we have to get perspective over these long to-do lists. What is your role and what do you need to perform and what do you need to play? Okay, but that's a longer conversation probably for Thursday. So how do I get mindful? You get perspective. What is critical? What's important? What is urgent? What's a priority? And learn to distinguish between those. The second thing is make time for mindfulness. As I said, breathing is essential for our well-being. There's tons of research, and if you speak to any wellness expert as well, they will tell you 10 minutes of breathing at the beginning of the day wins you 30 minutes to an hour later on in the day. And I have experienced that. There is something that happens in our system, in our body, in our thinking that shifts how we approach problems and things during the day, that gives us a clearer, more focused response to it, that buys us time. So I'm sorry, you're going to have to make the time. I live in KZN, so I'm a bit of an early riser. So I have my 5 a.m. ritual. Get out of bed. If you're not going for training, do your stretches in the morning. Literally, just do stretches. If you're not an exercise person, the first thing you do when you get out of the bed is stretch. And then you do 5 minutes of mindful breathing. Hopefully you can practice and extend that time to mindfulness exercises, but even if it's just breathing the way I've taught you today.
Wonderful.
And try and drip it in throughout the day. Remember to step up, step away, go get your coffee. Don't let the coffee be served to you and never move from your desk. Try and get outside, feel the breeze, smell the roses, feel the sunlight on your skin.
Another question that we have from our chat, thank you for that, is can breathing help healing? I think that's very relevant during these COVID times that we live in. Can breathing help healing? Yeah,
so I'm not going to go into too much detail because I'm not a health doctor. I'm the other doctor. So I'm not going to explain too much how the healing happens, but definitely, as I said, often we think the mind is on its own and the body's on its own and our soul lives on its own, but it's all interconnected in your body. So a healthy mind cultivates a healthy body. You could do 100 hours of gym exercise and eat healthily. If your mind is out of whack, if it's disconnected, you can still become ill. So there's definitely a connection between the mind and the body. As I said, proper breathing helps the oxygen to flow up to the to feed our brains as well. So breathing is very healthy for that, for the neurons and for the connect between the mind and the body. So it can lead to healing. Yes.
Wonderful. Another question that we have is, what's the difference between breathing through the mouth and through the nose versus breathing through the nose?
It's just a state of deeper breathing. So, for example, if you take shallow breaths, if you're running, for example, we keep our mouths open because our heart rate is faster and we take shallow breaths. If we can take deeper breaths, especially when you do a mindfulness exercise, it is always better to breathe in through your nose and let it go straight up through your sinuses into your brain and push it out through your mouth.
Wonderful. Thank you for that. And then there's another question that we have. How does one set work-life boundaries when you're working from home?
This is my favorite topic. So I also think later on in September, we actually have a conversation around hybrid working. So I will definitely expand a lot more on that. But just in terms of our conversation today and mindfulness, one of the biggest challenges we're finding is that people are struggling to switch off. In fact, you know, we all thought it was going to be so much better because we're winning so much time by not sitting in traffic. We are so much more relaxed. We don't have to spend hours in the morning getting ready, getting everybody sorted. But for some reason, it is as if the pressure, the burnout as a condition has escalated over the last 18 months. It is as if work pressure has increased. But the challenge I'm also seeing is it happens because people do not know how to distinguish between work and home anymore, because everything now lives in the same space. Work is home and home is work. When we
those
work from
boundaries.
home. And therefore, what we have to do is teach people how to manage the boundaries. Now, there's easy boundaries, there's physical boundaries, but probably the more important is where we are today, where we talk mind boundaries. So just quickly on the physical boundaries, remember we had an action of moving to work and moving home. So that in between was also a way of changing gears in your mind and say, I am now switching off. I am closing my office door. Sometimes some of us were lucky and I could leave the computer at work. Whereas now we don't have that transition. So create a transition for you. Create a way of, if you don't have a dedicated office space at work, figure out a way, even if it's just symbolic, to say the office is now closed and home has switched on. The challenge I see, especially and unfortunately with a lot of working mums, is we disconnect, go make food, sort out the kids, but then we come back at 8 or 9 o'clock. That is the biggest challenge, because if you're still doing cognitive stuff at 8 or 9 p.m., it's going to take you a long time to switch the brain off and eventually get to sleep and get to calm down. Try and set hours for yourself and work within that. As much as we say, oh, the list is long, we are contracted to work 8 hours a day. And I know a lot of people probably have a giggle over there, but we are still contracted. You need to figure out what are we doing wrong. Set hours, set your lunch breaks, take your lunch breaks. The other thing we're finding is people are not sick anymore, not because they're not sick, but because they're not taking sick leave. Because I'm at home anyway, why must I take sick leave? So you have to disconnect. Find different work rituals that you were used to at the office. So something like drinking up. We know the water cooler thing. You know, at the office, it wasn't just work all the time, or it wasn't always formal meetings. Sometimes we just met in the kitchen and it's a cup of coffee. So try and create that in the virtual space. without feeling like it's more work, it's another meeting.
Right.
Then probably the most important, so that will help with the mind boundaries, because as I said, if you can set our working time for yourself, if you can close and say this laptop is now closed, which means it's the end of work day. The difficult one is shutting off the mind. I've seen in the chat a lot of people are saying they think about work 150% of the time. That is scary, because you, apart from sleep and mindfulness, you also have a family and friends and other things you need to think about. So you need to find ways to still your mind, to shut down in your mind as well.
Wonderful. Thanks, Natasha. There's a great question here that we've got from Anonymous, and they're asking, can mindfulness and breathing help overcome a fear of failure? And I think everyone has had a moment in the workplace where we have had a fear of failing. And will our breathing exercises help us to overcome that?
I'm so glad they posed that question. So that's a wonderful question. Conversation that we're definitely going to go deeper into on Thursday. And I would really want to, after Thursday, to encourage the leaders to work more with their teams on this topic. But that is a very good question, because that is the root of why we can't switch off. So we oftentimes, we may have a big workload, but it's not so much the amount of work that we have to do, but the way we go about doing the work that is challenging. And then the way we go about doing the work has a lot to do with who we are as people. And if you can't switch off, I often, when I coach somebody, the first thing I would ask is, are you letting go of things, or are you a perfectionist? And then I would get to a root cause of perfectionism. They just can't let go. And perfection, unfortunately, it's also not it's just another symptom. So when I go deeper in the conversation, I will find things like, but there's actually fear of failure or insecurity happening there. And then we have to work through that. So one thing that I can tell you is, if you still your mind through breathing exercises, it helps you to put things in perspective, and it helps you to go to those places. In fact, Andile, if you would bear with me, I want to do a little story here as well.
Yes, please.
So what happens when we stress? In fact, I had a little talk the other day with a group of ladies around speaking into your storm. So stress is a storm that we experience. So the most recognizable feature of a storm, so think about a really bad storm, think about a hurricane. The most recognizable feature of a hurricane, if you watch it in the distance, it's the most beautiful thing, is the eye of the hurricane. It's found right in the center of the storm. It's very big. And the eye is really the focus. It's where everything happens, okay? Everything in a storm rotates around the eye. And the lowest surface pressures are found in the eye. Now, studies have shown that the sky above are often the most clearer just above the sky. The winds are relatively light. So basically what it means is, in the midst of the storm, in the eye of the storm, technically, it's actually the calmest place in the storm. So when you are in a storm, when you are stressed, I always tell people, first of all, name your storm. So do your breathing to calm your mind, to get perspective. To name your storm, to understand what is going on, and you can only do that when you've calmed your mind. Because if you're in the storm, remember what I said about amygdala. The amygdala is where we have our emotional response, and our emotional response triggers an impact in the body. And then we're not thinking rationally anymore. We're only thinking with our amygdala, with our emotions. So the key in the breathing exercise and calming yourself down, you know, remember that silly thing when your mom says count to 10 before you answer? It's a way of centering yourself so that you can think with both your emotions and with your logical brain. So around that, just maintain a healthy lifestyle, maintain balance. When you're in the storm, remember you can't always see clearly because it's raining, you're experiencing physical discomfort. Similarly, in a stress storm, you're experiencing emotion, fear. So find a way to clarify the noise. Remember, in Ingrid's session, she gave you the tips: fact, focus, flex. Okay, face the facts, get perspective, find focus by stilling your mind, and flex to flourish. It's remember what I said, what you repeatedly choose to do is what forms a habit, what becomes a habit. Okay. So sorry, I went a bit of a tangent. I don't even know.
No, it was a wonderful response to a very, very critical question, because we all have a fear of failure. Another question, Natasha, is what is the recommended healthy ratio of thinking of work? You asked us a question earlier about how often and what's that percentage that we think about work. So there's a question for you, Natasha. How often should we be thinking about work? That's being thrown back at
I'm
you.
literally going to suck out of my thumb because I have no exact scientific research answer. So here's how my common sense is going to answer that. I divide my day in 3 parts. Okay, you should get 8 hours of sleep. We should. I know there are people that think they're supermen and superwomen. 2 hours is enough.
Yes.
No, you should sleep. Sleep is good for you. You must sleep. So technically, you should get 8 hours of sleep. Now, within that 8 hours, you and I had this chat the other day. Sometimes there's a ritual. So you may sleep for 7 hours, but then give yourself 1 hour to settle into getting ready for sleep, wind down. Okay, so 8 hours is sleep. 8 hours is work. That's what we contracted, isn't it? We all have an employee contract that says I'm working 8 hours a day, which leaves you with 8 hours. Now, how do you spread those 8 hours? You have to get some exercise in. Oh, now Natasha's added breathing. You have to feed the kids. You have to get them off to school. You have to study. You have to stimulate your mind in other ways. You know, so you have all the other living stuff to do. So that's the guidance for me. I shouldn't spend more than 8 hours actively thinking about work, isn't it?
It makes sense. Andre is saying, is it winding down or whining down? I'll leave.
Andre, I think you and I shall take that conversation.
I'll leave that up to him. And then another anonymous question is, how do you channel your mind to be at one place while there are other pressures going on? I'm assuming that this is distinction between you've got one issue perhaps that's maybe work related and there's maybe something else happening in your personal life. So the question though is, how do you channel your mind to be at one place whilst there are other pressures going on? So how am I present here whilst I have other pressures going on?
So first of all, if for those that have ever practiced meditation or mindfulness exercises, they will tell you it is the most difficult thing you can do. So I'm a reasonably focused person. I love doing one thing at a time. I'm not a multitasker. I can multitask, but I don't like multitasking. I feel I'm an extrovert, so I get flustered and I am ineffective. So I love focusing. So I thought it would be easy to meditate because I can still my mind. 30 seconds and I'm gone. One thought after the other. So practicing mindfulness is not easy. But I'm going to put it out there. You have to practice. Remember what I said about this brain of ours. It never stops. In fact, last night I was listening to a talk by somebody talking about the different sleep patterns. And he was saying what goes through the different phases. And he said in the REM phase is actually where your brain is doing the best work ever. when you're in your REM sleep, and it takes quite a while to get to REM sleep stage. So you need 8 hours. You have to get there, because that's when your brain starts creating new connections. So sorry, I'm going off tangent again. It is very difficult. You have to practice it. You have to, and that is why mindfulness and meditation is a good exercise to teach your brain to quieten down. Okay, and then just practically, when you focus on work and you don't want to interfere with family, or focus on family, don't want to, you have to learn to be mindful. Now, what is mindful is you keep with one thing at all times without judging that thing, just staying there. I have, when I do this exercise with people, I say, take a silly thing. You know, when for the guys, I would encourage you tonight after supper, you do the washing up. Don't pack it in the dishwasher, wash it. And as you're standing there now, doing dishes is the most mindless exercise. So we go off on it. That's where the mind can go. But as you're doing the dishes, think about the water, feel the soap through your finger, like really concentrate on what you're doing. Now, those are exercises you can do to teach your mind to be mindful on what you're doing. When you're with your kids, even if it's a brainless exercise, I can solve work problem while I'm also pretending to be interested in your little song and ballet routine. Don't do that. Focus on their song and ballet routine. It'll give them satisfaction, and it'll give you more satisfaction. So it is, unfortunately, remember what I said, you have to rewire your mind to form new habits.
Wonderful. And Natasha, it actually reminds me of something that I saw on Twitter this week, and I'd like to hear what your comment would be on this topic that we picked up this week. But it says that the quote that we picked up on, it's from the lady called Katie Leeson, who's the MD of Social Chain Agency. And it says, we need to stop glamorizing overworking. The absence of sleep, good diet, exercise, relaxation, and time with friends and family isn't something to be applauded. Too many people wear their burnout as a badge of honor, and it needs to change. And that's something that I think we look at and we think, well, sure. I mean, a lot of people say they don't take leave, they don't take time out, and they sleep for 2 hours or 4 hours in an evening. And you're saying we need to be sleeping for 8 hours. So perhaps if you could just leave us with a closing statement based on what we saw this week on Twitter, and how we should be applying perhaps this type of learning for this week.
So one of the things, when we started this series, we said we are looking at wellness as an integral construct. And you guys have had sessions around financial wellness, physical wellness, different aspects of it. Now, one of the things as well that we need to consider is wellness within a context, because we are speaking about taking ownership for your own wellness, and you do that within a context. So we live in a context. Now, where the tweet is coming from is saying we live in a culture that celebrates certain things. Okay, so we celebrate being skinny and half anorexic because those are the models that you see. Those are people that. Now, to change that, apart from the fact that we have to build really good young, strong females, etc., but another way to change it is to change the discourse in the culture, in the system. So suddenly we put different types of models. We project and talk about different types of beauty. Now, the reason I'm going there is because the public discourse or the culture sends loud signals around where we're vibrating at, what frequency are we vibrating. So if you then want to go off that frequency, it's like swimming into the current. It's much tougher. So the point that she's making, and I agree 100%, unfortunately, we do live in a culture where all of those things happen. So as much as we work within ourselves, we also have to look at the system that we're in. And if we can influence the system, so that is why the work we do here, we take it further on a Thursday with the leadership team. So on Thursday, one of the conversations we'll have is, how is BRAWL as a system cultivating exactly what you're asking now? Is the system giving that impression that we all have to work hard, that if your little button is red after 6 p.m., there's something wrong with you. Why are you offline? If that's the norm, if our procedures and practices feeds into that, how do we have to start building down those barriers? So it is a very good point, and I agree with it. And then we can go the other extreme. We can go to the 70s, where the hippies and the hippie culture is like just free love and free for all, and we
Go
know
with the
where
flow.
that led. Go with the flow, and we know what that led to. It led to us Gen Xers that were workaholics, because they were so busy going with the flow. We had to pick up the economy again. So yeah, it's
a balance.
It's a balance, but we have to consider what the system is also feeding into it.
There's a statement. I don't think there's a comment. I don't think it's a question, but I will read it, and maybe you can extend on it. It's from Balaji, and the statement is fear of failure. It is actually established that what we fear does not even happen most of the time. To kill the fear, you have to face the thing that you fear. And Balaji says that he's very happy to be here. He's glad to be here.
I can't echo more. Definitely 100%. That is why I said you have to get to the root of what's causing the stress. Because even in the stress, people have a wrong idea about burnout. They think if they work hard or long hours, it'll lead to burnout. Burnout is not about working hard or working long hours. Burnout is a psychological state. It's where your mental wellness hit the wall. When you are not feeling fulfilled, you're not experiencing purpose in what you're doing, you're feeling overstretched, you have probably issues with fear of failure, and that causes burnout. So you can have somebody with the lowest work load ever, and they could be burnout because it is a psychological. So spot on there, Balaji. We have to get to the root of what's driving this. What is causing you to not shut down at 6 p.m.? Is it really a long to-do list, or is it your fear of somebody going to think you're inadequate because you can't finish your to-do list? And then also, what is on the to-do list? Does it have to be there, or were you scared to say no to something that's not really your job? Yeah, so we can go on about fears.
We could. It's a really a wonderful topic. And one last statement before we close, Natasha. And also, this is another one that we picked up online, and it's from Adam Grant, who's an organizational psychologist. And the statement was, resting is not a waste of time. It's an investment in well-being. And relaxing is not a sign of laziness. It's a source of energy. Breaks are not a distraction. They're a chance to refocus attention. And play is not a frivolous activity. It's a path to connection and creativity. And I thought if you could maybe close with that. And we'd like to extend a big BRAWL thank you to you for affording us your time today. And maybe if you could just give us a closing statement before we go this afternoon. And so that we remember how to breathe, of course.
I will just say, I don't think I've got words to top your beautiful quote now. I would say, let's close off with a breath. Let us all take
Wonderful.
A victorious breath in through our nose. Remember, Ingrid said you're taking light into your brain and into your spirit, and breathe out. Breathe out all that toxins and all the nonsense. Remember to plant your feet. In your mind's eye, see those little roots going down. It stabilizes you. It gives you a sense of control and balance. and I really enjoyed sharing this time. I am totally overwhelmed that we spent all the time. I thought this was going to be a shorter session.
We enjoyed the time as well. And thank you so much. And thank you to all the Brollies that joined us this afternoon. And just a reminder that we have our next session of the course series next week, Tuesday, same time, same place, different topic. And until next time, remember that we are all in this together, even though we're apart. Take care and goodbye.